This is Swarfcast. I'm Noah Graff. I'm extremely honored to be with a longtime friend in the business, a lifer in the machining industry, Greg Knight. We are at PMTS in 2025, and I hadn't seen Greg probably since the last conference in 2023, and it's amazing to run into him. I first met him, I think, at my first PMPA conference. It must have been, I don't know, 19, 20 years.
No, San Antonio. San Antonio.
I was like, who's this guy? He's cool. I like him. I was like, and I didn't really know much back then, and you were telling me about selling Brown Sharpes with CNC on it, and I thought, that sounds interesting. I don't really know much about either one, but you befriended me right away. And now Greg's retired, and but I want to get his story of how he started in machining and the different stages he's been in, and then some of his current challenges he's working through as somebody with ALS. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Noah.
Why don't we just get started? How you're 70?
Yes.
You're 70. Okay. And would you say you were born into the machining industry?
To a point, I had no actual intention of becoming part of the machining industry. My father started a machine shop running Brown Sharpes when he was 50, and actually began it in the proverbial garage, cut a hole in the wall to feed the stock through, and soon moved out, bought some more machines. My mom went to work with him, and I was indentured into servitude.
How old were you at the time when he started the company?
I would have been 16.
Okay.
And so I acquired the job of, for free, of deburring parts and washing parts and helping out.
And you were 15, you said?
16, I think. 15 or 16.
Okay.
So somewhere in there.
So then what happened? Was it successful?
Well, actually, even in the garage, I think the first year he told me that he made $300.
And this is when in the
1970.
70s? Okay.
So that's not
$300 profit.
$300 profit. The point is,
but he paid himself.
He made a profit the first year in business, which is actually not bad with one guy and one machine.
Sure.
And he had been a machinist most of his life. After he got out of World War II, he started to work at Jeffries Manufacturing and worked there for 16 years, and then worked on cones mostly, and then he worked on Brown Sharpes after that.
Okay.
So I worked evenings, that sort of thing, a little bit in the summers. Hated it. Didn't like it at all. It was all put and take stuff. It was all manual labor. I had my own little side business mowing lawns, and I made much more money doing that. But once my dad got established, he was making enough money to manage to send me to college. Never took an engineering or business course in my life.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question.
I had majors in psychology, philosophy, religion, and sociology.
Which I can definitely see, definite. There's definite currents I see in your life with that.
It was a liberal arts school, and it taught me to read and write well. and some other things. So I took calculus courses for fun because I enjoyed math, but never anything in the engineering. And really, ever since I got out of college, I've done nothing but run businesses and do engineering stuff. So you don't necessarily have to have a degree in that to become accomplished at it.
No. So you're saying you don't need a degree in engineering or business to become accomplished at it?
No, although I'm sure some things would help depending on what you're doing, but it's different when you're the one doing it than you're getting hired to do a very specific job like engineering. So what really happened is after I got out of college, what I was going to do is go to graduate school and get a PhD in psychology to become a counselor. And my dad's health turned south, and my mom pleaded with me. I'm an only kid. So my mom pleaded with me to come and help at the shop, and so I did. And one thing turns into another, and you kind of get trapped into making money, and all of a sudden going back to graduate school and going into debt to do that didn't seem like a
and the whole John Lennon, life's what happens when you're making other plans.
Yeah. So it was, none of this was by design. Once I had worked there for a few years, and I mean 2 or 3 years, doing lots of put and takes kind of stuff, and I said, if I'm going to stay, I need to learn what to do in a little more detail with these machines and learn the business end of it.
Was the business by that point relatively successful?
Yes, I don't believe my father ever missed a year of being profitable.
Wow, amazing.
And my father was one of these people who, he grew up in a one-room dirt floor log cabin in southern Indiana. His dad died when he was 12. He was the only boy in the family, so he went to work to support the family.
Did he not believe in
have
debt?
An education.
Did he believe in no debt? Or
no, I mean, they borrowed money like everybody else did back then to buy a house. But he never went into debt to start the business.
Right. I guess that was what I was thinking, since they made a profit immediately.
No, we didn't go into debt in the business until I took it over.
Okay. So you took it over.
We were still profitable.
You were profitable.
But we borrowed money because sometimes you don't want to spend all the capital.
Sure.
And so if you can borrow money at a good rate, and my mom was actually very good at negotiating with the bank, good rates. It just makes sense.
So how long did you work in the production business?
I spent either working in the business, running the business, and owning the business 20 years.
20 years. Okay.
And we started out with mostly Brown Sharpes. Eventually, I put in some cones after my father had passed away, and we got into some CNC lathes and mills. But we were still primarily a screw machine house.
Okay, and what kind of work were you doing for what sectors?
Actually, varied. We used to do a lot of the screw machine work for the business machine sector, which once everything became electronic, that went away.
What do you mean, like typewriters or?
A dressograph, mimeograph machines, some typewriters, credit card machines. All that was mechanical back then.
A lot of people listening to this don't even know what half of those things are.
You're right.
I don't even. What is a mimeograph?
That's that thing. Oh yeah, you're young. You wouldn't remember that. So mimeographs were those machines that made copies of your tests when I was in elementary school, and the stuff had a very peculiar odor to it, and it kind of was purplish as it printed out.
Like carbon paper?
No, not like carbon paper. It was, I guess, I don't even know the process, but somehow it ran, it would take a master and it would run and it would make copies. So it was like a copy machine, but it was mechanical.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so 20 years goes by, and then you were looking for a shift?
Excuse me?
After 20 years, you were just like, all right, it's time for a change?
No, the industry changed. We got into doing much more parts for pleasure boat industry, in particular ski boats. Made parts for those. Made parts for
Late 80s, early 90s?
yes. Made parts for various recreational vehicle kind of things. Fluid power industry, valves and that sort of thing. But what really happened is eventually my mom was still part owner of the business. She kind of wanted out. Now my father, to make this make some sense, my father, literally I was having a conversation like this with him. He walked a few steps away and dropped dead on the shop floor. And my mom was very concerned that was going to happen to me, and so she wanted to sell the business.
Oh, she thought it might be hard on your health.
Right.
Interesting. And what did you think?
I thought I could handle that okay, but sometimes you can't fight City Hall. And so we became...
What do you mean you can't fight City Hall?
My mom being City Hall. You can't fight the powers that be.
Okay.
You don't pick a fight with your mom, do you?
I haven't really needed to.
Yeah, okay.
Thankfully.
Well, so we also, in the early 90s, we were doing work for a bicycle component company who was having trouble paying us, so we wound up owning half of them. So I was then running two companies, and they very quickly became our biggest customer, obviously. So when we sold, it didn't sell that part immediately, but we also then became the first guinea pigs, if you will, and the engineering team at AMT Engineering would call me up once in a while and pick my brain about how you lay out cams, how you do this, how you do that, and that's where the servocam stuff came out of.
The Brown Sharpe is still sort of a mystery to me, that you make your own cams but
yes.
And we've given the lesson on the show a few times about how it works, but we got a lot to cover. But anyways, AMT came up with a CNC version of the Brown Sharpe.
Of the Brown Sharpe.
What does AMT stand for?
Adaptive Machine Technology, I believe.
Okay.
They made, you ever see that big four or six-legged walking machine that DARPA had made?
Yeah.
They made that. They engineered and designed that.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were a pretty cool company, but I was only hired in to deal with the servocam part. So I ran the servocams for a couple of years before I sold my shop.
Okay, so you were running your shop, and then they started bouncing ideas off you to try various things, and then they were like, "Can you sort of run this division?"
Well, yeah, they said, "Would you consider coming to work, doing a product launch?" Now they tried other things. They tried Brown Sharpe, and Brown Sharpe was already on the downslide big time, so they didn't want to buy the idea. They didn't really want to become the manufacturers. They wanted to sell the idea, but everybody was...
AMT wanted to sell the idea.
AMT wanted to sell the idea and get paid for their engineering work.
Makes sense.
So I basically told them, I can't. I'm running my machine shop. I'm running this bicycle company. I can't run a third company. It's too much. And that's when my mom said, I want out. Let's sell the company. Mm-hmm. So we went through that process. Most people just wanted to buy the customers and screw the employees and
how many employees did you have?
By that time, we had about 20, 25 employees.
Oh.
And so we just neither mom and I could do that. It just, their families depended on us. So what we did eventually, we found, actually we didn't find, we got a letter from a guy who wanted to buy a medium-sized screw machine house in the county we were in, and he wanted the employees to participate.
And you were near
near
Columbus?
Fairfield County. So just the county just outside of Columbus.
Columbus, Ohio. Okay.
And so got that all wrapped up. It was a done deal. And eventually my employees bought out that investor and
made it ESOP?
They're doing quite well, yeah. So they're still doing well today.
What's the company?
Now it's called Carroll Screw Products.
Huh. I feel like I've heard of that.
Actually, no, it was Carroll. Now it's Fairfield Machined Products.
Interesting. Do they run Brown and
They're
Sharpes?
still running Brown and Sharpes. A lot of them still with servo cams. They got rid of most of the cones. They've got into some CNC equipment, but not heavy.
Mm-hmm. When you were selling these Brown and Sharpes with servo cams, how much did these machines cost? And was this late 90s, early 2000s?
So most people already had the machines. We were just putting on an upgrade.
You were putting the cams on people's Brown and Sharpes?
We were putting the servo cam unit on.
That makes sense.
And so I think the price started out in the beginning, so in 1998 at $15,000 for the upgrade, which
that was
is
about
more than
30 grand now.
Yes, it eventually became more than that because we started rebuilding the whole machine and refurbishing it and doing everything through the drivetrain. So those were 150 by the time we got there.
Yeah, because I'm sure it worked better when it was integrated and.
Yeah, but I was able to take the company from the beginning.
So you took this division of AMT and you really got to build it.
And was the only employee for a while. I got another employee before too long, but.
Well, who built it? Who you contracted people to retrofit the machines?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, not to retrofit it. I did a lot of that myself. We contracted people to machine the parts. And then the electronics, then we built the controls at AMT. So AMT became a control maker.
And you were in sales and you were actually making
I was in sales, I was in installation, I did people's training. Again, when you're a one-employee company, that's kind of what you have to do.
But it was still owned by AMT.
It was owned by AMT. I was a minority investor.
That sounds pretty difficult for that to succeed when you're doing everything.
It was, and I didn't do everything for very long. Truly, I think just a few months in, they allowed me to acquire another employee. And but the real thing, the challenge was you're selling a fairly expensive upgrade into a market that everybody at the time was saying this is a dying market.
And the machines
didn't cost as much as the upgrade did.
How much did a Brown and Sharpe cost in 2000?
So, a good model one might actually still go for $15,000, $20,000 back then. Yeah. Very shortly after that, much less.
I mean, for people who don't know, like nowadays, you could find a good Brown and Sharpe for $1,000. It's possible. Yes. You could also pay $5,000, or we had an auction a couple of years ago. There was some servo cam ones. There's been so many different generations, and because Brown and Sharpe did their own CNC, and I think those went for like $8,000 each or something, which seemed like a lot.
Brown and Sharpe CNCs?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what they sold for new?
Didn't you just say like $150,000 or something?
Yeah, 125. The Brown and Sharpe ones.
Right, and
that
was 2,000.
For 150.
So that was like $250,000 back then.
Well, Brown and Sharpe made a deal with Allen Bradley and put a already obsolete control on that machine. Brown and Sharpe made a bunch of management mistakes.
Because that's the problem with buying these CNC Brown and Sharps right now, is that there's so many different controls and then getting parts for them. And
It's difficult, but one of the engineers who designed the system still services what he can.
the AMT system.
The AMT system, and he just kind of does that as a side business, and so you can still keep them running.
Okay, so now
Some have certain controls that just can't be replaced anymore because you can't get them.
got you. Well, so you're saying AMT had a whole bunch of different generations of controls too, then?
Well, we had, I think, 3 or 4 different iterations over 15 years. Now, that's not really a lot when you think about it.
Sure. Okay, so, as a lot of people probably don't know, but I mean, Brown and Sharps are still used today. I mean,
Absolutely.
People can make a lot of money on them. And
If they can find people to run them.
if they can find people to run them, and if they have an open mind. But, okay, then you went on to work. Now you worked for Absolute. That was your last stop in your career?
That was my last stop, yes. So I worked about 15 years at AMT, and AMT went kind of belly up through some, again, bad management decisions. By the way, lots of people want to blame the workers for failures in businesses. It's usually the management.
Not in your case.
Though this was on the engineering side. So the parent company went out. Servocam was still making money. But the engineering company got into some trouble.
I see. So AMT got into some trouble. Servocam was making a good product.
Still making it a good product, still making money with their division.
Okay. So then what did you do after that?
A group of people who had been investors in the Servocam said, why don't you start a company, we'll bankroll you, and we'll still sell Servocams, because AMT was going to still make the controls.
Okay.
Well, in the meantime, I had some dealings with Leico in Taiwan, and even before AMT went out, I began bringing over the Leico machines.
Okay. So Leico, for those people who don't know, explain the Leico. Did the Leico come about sort of in parallel to the Brown and Sharpe?
Well, the Leico is a full CNC screw machine. Leico originally were making Traub knockoffs, so
Right.
they understood the screw machine business, and when everybody was going to CNCs, they said, we're going to make a CNC screw machine.
All right. I'm gonna ask you to time out here. If anybody can do this, it would be you. Okay. I need you to describe the Brown and Sharpe a little bit, and then, as many people don't realize, but other builders around the world, Traub, Index, they had their own sort of Brown and Sharpish machine.
Yes?
Explain that to people so it's just not totally abstract. I mean, to me, it's interesting because it's like a turret, but it's perpendicular to the spindle, and so it's not. I guess it's not crazy that a company in Taiwan had this concept because it wasn't just Brown and Sharpe in the United States.
Right. So what happened is, so Brown and Sharpe actually began in the 1800s.
Okay.
And the thing that makes them somewhat unique was still a patent that they received, I think, in 1896, if I'm not mistaken. And that patent was that little cam back there. So they did 2 things. One, they made a cam system that controlled the bar feed mechanism and the collet at the same time. So it was all synchronized. And in one operation of this cam, it would open the collet, feed the bar, close the collet, and pull the pusher back over the bar. That was completely unique. Before that was all done manually.
Okay.
And so it actually was a fairly accurate way of, and fast. It was either a half second or a second, depending on what gears you put on it. So that was one of their patents. The other patent was slaving the front camshaft, which controlled the cross slides, and there's 3 or 4 cross slides on the Brown and Sharpe, to the lead camshaft. And again, no one had done that before. So now you could synchronize the turret and the cross slides, and that meant you could do operations in parallel.
Okay.
Instead of serially. Very important concept in screw machining.
So Brown and Sharpe came up with that idea, and then did Index and Traub copy that?
That's my understanding, and Traub didn't use that kind of feed system at all. Index did, and so I'm not sure whether they did something different to do the feeds. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, basically the Brown and Sharpe's, I believe, I'm not sure about this, but so the American war effort was, of course, supported by all kinds of machinery, Acme's, Brown and Sharpe's, et cetera, et cetera.
Davenport's particularly.
Davenport's, yes. And so the Germans said, we need something like this, and they just engineered, again, something like that. And there was some crossover. Brown and Sharpe was already making stuff in England, and there was some crossover with Germany there at some point, and I'm not sure about the details of that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, actually, wars have driven innovation of a lot of things.
Of course.
Not that that's a great thing, but it's a fact.
I've heard it from many people that Davenport is the machine that won World War II.
Yeah, I mean, I could believe it. Actually,
because they had the single spindles, the other guys, and we could spit them out with 5 spindles.
Right. Well, even, I mean, the Acme's, there were tons of Acme's making bullets and shell casings and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Bigger stuff.
True.
Bigger caliber. Davenports couldn't run that big of stuff.
Did the Germans have, I mean, I know indexes existed, but...
Yeah. So Index already had their multi-spindle version, but I don't think they started the single spindles until in the 40s sometime. But I may be wrong about that. That may not be exactly right.
All right. Well, cool. Okay. So back to Taiwan. You found out what was your connection with Taiwan and Leico?
Well, so I was up at IMTS one year, and I'm walking down, this is when I was with Servocam, walking down the aisle, and here sits this Asian gentleman on a metal chair with a box of catalogs, and he's very unhappy. And I said, your machines didn't make it here? And he proceeded to tell me my machines are sitting out there. They won't bring them in because the show had already started. And he said, let me show you a video. Well, I saw the video and immediately recognized this is where we eventually would like to go with the Servocam stuff. So right away...
You were with AMT still?
Yes. So right away I saw some possible symbiosis. And but our controllers wouldn't control everything in parallel the way they could do.
Because that machine was more developed.
Yes. And so we didn't ever develop a control, but I stayed very interested, and they wanted to know if we were interested in selling the line, and the engineering side of the company said, no, we don't want to become, at the time they were doing all Siemens controls, we don't want to learn the Siemens controls, we got our own controls.
Why would they need to buy AMT if they were already making sort of a CNC.
Oh, they didn't need to. What we were looking to do is make controls for them, because our controls were simpler to program. But that never happened. We never got there. So I had kept in contact, and I would go over to Taiwan sometimes for machining stuff, sometimes for my martial arts things, and
Yeah, we'll have
visit
to
my
talk
teacher.
about that. That is an interesting little cross.
Yes. And so every time I would go to see my teacher, I'd make a trip.
Greg is would you say you're a master of Tai Chi?
Call it what you want.
I
I got pretty good at it.
Greg's pretty damn good at Tai Chi.
I would go see my teacher over there, who also came to the U.S. at times. But and every time I'd go down, I'd make a point to go down to Taichung and visit Lyco. And eventually, they became dissatisfied with their representation here in the U.S. and said, "Let's talk." So again, AMT began bringing in the Lycos. So it was really the Lyco machine that drove people to say, "Here, we'll bankroll the company. You sell the Lycos." And we thought we were going to sell servo cams too, but that didn't work out very long.
Okay, so
Because
at
AMT went belly up then.
PMTS right now,
Yes.
some beautiful Lycos out there.
Sure.
Would those Lycos be out there if it were not for you doing Tai Chi? Serendipity.
Yes. I mean, Euroturn, they wouldn't be in the Absolute booth probably. Euroturn was bringing in the Lycos for a while.
Euroturn? You mean Gossiger?
I'm sorry, Eurotech.
Oh, Eurotech. Okay.
Yes. Sorry about that.
It's not the first or the last.
Yeah, I'm sure. And again, it was sort of here's a Eurotech, here's a Eurotech, here's a Eurotech, and if you really don't want a Eurotech, here's a Lyco. And, Lyco wasn't happy about being second fiddle. And so, and they had come to believe that I knew the Brown and Sharpe market very well in the U.S., which I did. So we negotiated and started bringing the line in.
Interesting. Okay. And then you work for Absolute Machine Tools.
Yes. So I ran that company that some investors bankrolled, and I had some skin in it also. And unfortunately, we just picked bad timing. It was
2008.
some bad years, ugly years, and we didn't sell as many as we would like to be. We didn't sell enough really to be ever profitable in that particular company. After running my screw machine company and being profitable every year except for one, and that was the year we tripled the size of the building. So there's reasons for that. The investors were looking for a way out, and the investors were all older than me.
Mm-hmm.
So Absolute came into the picture wanting to be a distributor.
And Absolute was, okay, so Absolute distributes Nextern, they distribute...
Nextern, UG, Johnford's, and a variety of other machines now.
Okay. And then at the time, they were just like, no, this looks like this could be something to add to our line.
Yes. And so they became a distributor for us. And in no time, they were selling more of them than we were as a company. So it was obvious to me what needed to happen. So I talked to my investors and put together a plan. I actually talked to Steve and Courtney. They came down for a meeting, and Steve was like, right now, like I said, it hadn't been great times.
Mm-hmm.
I can't buy another company, because he had bought several companies.
You're talking about Absolute.
Yeah. And I said, I think I can make you a deal that you can't refuse to borrow a line. And so we did. We sold them all of our machinery stock, all of our spare parts stock, and whatever of the employees they wanted to come with them.
Including you.
I had to go. That was part of the deal. I had to go with it.
That's how it often is when people acquire companies.
Right. And I told them, you can acquire all that, and only pay us off as you sell the stuff. And Steve was like, you're right. It's probably going to be a pretty hard offer to refuse.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And it was, for my investors, wasn't they already had the money sunk in, so for them waiting a little bit to get it back, and I think I got them back like, I forget, 75 cents on the dollar that they put in, which is that's not great, but most companies who go belly up are a lot worse off than that.
Sure.
They were all happy with how things wound up, and then I worked for AMT.
So you worked for one AMT, and then you worked for another.
I know,
AMT.
isn't that something?
I was looking at your shirt, and I go, wait, AMT. You actually call Absolute AMT?
Sometimes. For short.
Does that kind of like make you think twice? Do a double take?
No,
or not until this
not
very
at all.
moment?
Absolute, no. Steve Ortner started Absolute in, I forget now, 1980 something.
Mm-hmm.
And he has, I think he told me he never missed a year of being profitable.
Wow.
Even in 2008. Now, he said it was very close, and Courtney's told me, like everyone developing a business, there were times when they were wondering where the house payment was going to come from because they didn't take a check that month. But
always got to pay yourself.
Steve has done very well, and he has quite a business acumen, and manages somehow in his spare time to farm 1,000 acres or so. So he's got that farmer mentality to him.
It's so interesting how many people I interview and talk to who, yeah, we have a farm too, and it's just the farm is for pleasure. They're like, yeah, we don't make money from the farm.
He makes money from the farm, but he enjoys it very much. Absolute then developed sort of a division of production turning, and that was the next turns, and the Lycos, and the Quick Techs.
Quick Techs, okay.
And so I was kind of heading up that division, if you will. I had nothing to do with the big bridge mills and the UGs and the big stuff. I was production turning guy because that's what I knew.
Yeah.
And so they let me run with that, and we became profitable in that division.
Okay. So now, we're talking maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
Probably 8 years ago, something like that.
8 years ago. Okay. And then, as we say, life's what happens when you're making other plans.
Sure.
So, you've been working for Absolute. You've been doing Tai Chi. And then, life took another turn.
Yes. In 2019, I got diagnosed with ALS after like a 2-year period of getting poked and prodded. And the discovery method for ALS is basically they test you for every other possible neurological disease in the world. And if it's none of those, then they say you have ALS.
So what was your symptoms you were having?
Actually, it first began, I noticed I'd be at a hotel in the mornings reading my paper, and I went to set down my coffee cup, and I would get jittery with my hand, setting down the coffee cup, like reaching over the paper to do that.
Now, you're diabetic. Did
Yes.
you think at first that it had something to do with the diabetes?
No. I knew this was something different. And I let that go on for a couple of years till I really began recognizing it was becoming weaker. And a friend of mine, actually a Tai Chi buddy of mine who's a kidney specialist, he bought me a little, it's like a measure your pinch strength meter. And I monitored that for a few months, and indeed it was going down and down and down. So that's when I went to my doctor, who sent me to a neurologist, who sent me to another neurologist, and we went through the whole, is it carpal tunnel? Is it a muscular this? Is it, all kinds of stuff. There is no marker, there is no test for ALS.
Okay. We need to start from the beginning here. what does ALS even stand for? And then give us the basics.
Oh my, it's alateral. So the A and L is alateral, some long S word with psi something and Maya something in it. But basically, it's a disease where the brain can no longer communicate with motor neurons, and that spreads. Therefore, when the motor neurons can't tell the muscles to fire, they eventually atrophy, and so you lose muscular strength and control.
Okay, so it doesn't
It's
have to
called
do...
Lou Gehrig's disease is the more common name.
Right. But it sounded like from what you were saying before that it's not like exactly an official one size fits all.
Well, they're only recently finding that out. Yes, well, recent research is showing that it is it's as varied as cancer. There's lots of individual kinds of cancers, and there's lots of individual kinds. Like there's a genetic ALS, there's a non-genetic ALS, and there's different speeds. So originally, when I got diagnosed in 2019, they told me the average life expectancy is 3 to 5 years. So I'm sitting here now talking to you, and obviously not dead yet, and I probably won't be for a few more years. So
I remember seeing you yesterday, and I was like, "Oh, thank God, I'm seeing Greg."
Well, as it turns out, there's this 3 to 5 year span. Then there's another sort that's a 6 to 7 year span. Then there's another sport that's like a 10 to 12 year, and that's probably where I am. But there's some people, Stephen Hawking died from ALS, and he had it for 40 years before it killed him.
Right, but he was like in a wheelchair and...
Oh yeah, well, and so will I be at some point. It's just inevitable. It's what happens. It's a nasty disease.
Right, but it doesn't mess with your actual thinking, does it?
In a very minority of the cases, it can affect brain function, but so far mine hasn't. Okay. So I've always been this way.
So, okay, just to make sure, refresh me. So your brain is communicating with the rest of your body, and then that communication is messed up?
Somehow, motor neurons begin not receiving the signals from the brain or not processing them if they received them. I'm not sure the delineation there, but that means the muscles can't fire.
Okay, so right now this is on video. So this arm, your right arm, is...
Yeah, so
describe it.
I barely have an opposing thumb anymore. This doesn't work so well. This, I can't make a fist. I can't hold this arm up this one will go.
Are you right-handed or left-handed?
I'm right-handed, which is a real pain in the butt.
So you've learned to write your signature with your left?
Yes, I've learned to write. I can write numbers. I can print. My signature never was very pretty, so it's okay. Yes, so there's lots of things. It means you can't use a fork in this hand and a knife in this hand, so it's very difficult to cut food. So I have been very adaptive. I found specialty knives to use. I have, they're always, I go to, so once every 3 months I go to a clinic, an ALS clinic, and where all the different neuro people and nurses and social workers, et cetera, come around and see you.
So what's the treatment for it? Are there drugs?
So there's a drug called Riazole, and all they say in general is it's supposed to slow it down. There's no measurement of how effective it is.
But you take it?
I take it. And now I just got on an experimental program where it's another drug that I can take on top of that, where, again, it's supposed to slow things down. So I've only been on that for a few months, so I can't really say.
What are the side effects?
negligible for the really as a whole. The other one had a little intestinal discomfort for a couple of weeks, but then that went away.
So you retired.
So what I did, yes, I got diagnosed in 2019. I spent 2 years, and I went to Steve and said, "Hey, I'm going to take. I would like to take 3 weeks vacation every quarter." And he looked at me like, "What do you mean you're going to take 3?" I said, "Not paid, but I want to do things while I still can." And he got that.
Did you tell him that you had ALS?
Oh yes, yeah. I told him right away.
Okay.
I mean, other than my family and stuff, they were the first people I told. He supported that. He said he's fine with that. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then decided at the end of 2021,
3 weeks vacation every yeah. Okay. I mean, it's a lot of vacation, but it's not that much.
No, but I just wanted to be able to go do things that I wanted to do.
Well, you've been working hard all your life.
Had I known, I would have probably worked another couple of years here, had I known it was going to go this slowly. But you don't know, so that's what I did.
And now, you come to PMTS. Do you do any other stuff for the company?
I do a little. We'll call it consulting. It's not exactly consulting. I did some of I helped them with the strategic planning process. I sit in on some of the planning committees, that sort of thing. So mostly stuff I can do remote. I still do a few layouts for them here and there, and if it's a customer I already know, maybe I'll talk to them a little bit.
How does it feel to... I mean, look, we all have a limited time on this earth.
Sure.
How did it feel when they told you, you probably got 3 years, that's typical, whatever?
It sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, and I spent a certain amount of time feeling sorry for myself, like everyone would or does. I got over that pretty quickly, and because I'm just built that way, it's like, it is what it is, so now what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
And that's when I made some plans of what to do.
Do you feel like, in a way, it's given you gratitude for the time that you do have?
No, but I've always had a lot of gratitude. Mm-hmm. I mean, I realize...
You seem like you're very mindful.
I am, and I've just always been that way. So no, I don't think this did anything special in that.
Yeah.
I probably do have more sympathy for people who are handicapped now.
So right now, you can walk. Your right arm isn't too good.
Right. So I'm losing the muscles in my back, and so my back is unbalanced, which causes me some pain at night at sleeping, and this leg is beginning to... It gets weak. It gets tired quicker than this leg.
Okay.
And so, I mean, it's moving on, but it's...
So what are you doing physically?
But my... So the crazy thing is you can't exercise. They didn't bother to tell me that for the first couple of years I had this.
Did you exercise much before?
Yes. I mean, sit-ups, push-ups, planks, ran on an elliptical, lots of stretching. And so they mentioned that to them one time. They're like, you shouldn't be doing that. Because when you tear down... So the thing of it is you can't exercise...
It's got to really suck.
You can't exercise to the point of burn. So you can still exercise. So I still do gardening stuff. I still hike and walk, and I still do my martial arts stuff. I'm just limited. There's certain motions. One of my favorite motions was this, and I can no longer do that with this hand, But when I do this thing, I push this up and move it so I can keep moving.
How long have you been doing Tai Chi?
mid-'80s, so 40 years.
40 years. Okay. But Tai Chi, it seems like it would be a good, if you were going to be doing a martial art,
it is.
While having ALS, it would be the one.
They fully support my participation in that. And I do lots of stretching.
Is stretching a part of Tai Chi, a key part of it? Or?
Well, in Tai Chi, you do move. You move every joint in a form. So there is
Can you break down Tai Chi a little bit?
Well, first of all, it's not just the stuff you see old people in the park doing. It's actually a martial art.
Yeah.
It's a very old martial art. I would say 90% of the people who practice Tai Chi do not practice it as a martial art.
Mm-hmm.
My teachers did. Yeah, and I come from a school that did practice Tai Chi as a martial art. And so I've had that training. So breaking it down...
Is that push hands? That's the style?
No, push hands is just something you do. It's a training exercise, basically. Okay.
But it's the Tai Chi version of sparring?
Let's just say yes, and without getting
totally messing that up
too detailed. It's the push hands part is just a way to practice, and so you can do push hands a couple of different ways. You can be strong and lower and faster and all of that, or you can use skill. And when I say use skill, you allow people to come into your space and then cause them to lose their balance because they did.
So would you say that's like the finesse style?
That's the finesse. That's why my under 100-pound teacher, I could, no matter how I attacked him, I'd wind up on the ground.
So before you were diagnosed with ALS, were you a finesse person or were you
Yes.
a more... So you've always been finesse?
I've always tried that, and here's why. I've always been a big guy.
Yeah.
I was
That's
never
why
really,
I wasn't sure if you
really
worked out
walked
much
around
or
in
not.
fear. I started my journey with Tai Chi because of my interest in Chinese philosophy. Because Tai Chi is, so the Tai Chi symbol, the yin yang symbol, that's called the Tai Chi symbol. That's actually
I didn't know that
part
was the Tai Chi
of
symbol.
yin yang philosophy.
Okay.
Tai Chi is very tight. So when I expressed the interest in, Taoist, not religious Taoism, that's a whole different thing, but Taoist philosophy, somebody said, oh, you should learn Tai Chi. That's what it's all about. And so I did. So my journey into Tai Chi was never specifically about health or martial arts or anything else. It was just my interest in Chinese philosophy.
How often is that people get into it for that? My guess is very, very,
Rarely.
very rarely.
Very, very rarely. People either want to learn a martial art. So lots of people want
What
to
did
turn
people
Tai Chi
say in your class?
because they hear it's all healthy and everything. And then they find out it's not magic and there's actually work in it like everything else.
Oh my God, yeah.
And then they, there's lots of 6-month Tai Chi students.
I took a few classes and, it was hard for me to memorize the stuff to go practice at home. I did take videos of the teacher, but no, it didn't last.
I recommend you do not try to learn Tai Chi from a video.
Well, no, I mean, it was
you need a competent instructor.
That it was my instructor and then taking the video of the instructor and bringing that home.
Sure. So I was lucky enough to have 2 different instructors, one who was very much never use force, never push on people, only yield, which yield has a different kind of meaning for that stuff. So for years I thought yield meant just back up, get away. Well, it turns out yield actually means turn and do some other things and yield down here, but not necessarily up here. There's a whole lot to it. My other Tai Chi teacher, he had the same teacher as my other one, but he took it and he made it a little more mechanical. In fact, he's written a book called Body Mechanics. And he's out of New York City, And he's really world famous. I mean, he's been on the cover of Black Belt magazine and Martial Arts magazine, and
Wow.
he's quite well known. And he teaches a little more forceful variety, but he can still yield like
So you
my
can
other
really,
teacher.
if you're good at Tai Chi, you can defend yourself with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, yeah, I mean, when I think of it, I just think of somebody in the park, or I think of, I've heard about the push hands
But you have to
tournaments.
learn it that way. You have to understand what the movements are for. So even with the movements, you can say, what's the application? Well, it depends. Is the person attacking you high, low, fast, slow? So it's always a reaction. My teacher, who was the no force guy, he always said, the best form is no form. You just are so thoroughly immersed in that world that you automatically do what's right.
Interesting. My mom, she's I think she was 4th degree black belt in Taekwondo.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then she got this, I mean, it's definitely not as devastating as what you have, but all of a sudden she started getting these headaches. And one of the really crappiest part of these headaches was if she worked out, she'd get a headache. And not just a headache at the time, but like a headache that she couldn't get rid of. So, she's had to walk and kind of do exercise, but not to the point where she exerts herself. And so I'm thinking maybe Tai Chi would be something that might.
It could be very good for her. The thing about Tai Chi is there's not a lot of impact to it. There's not a lot of it's not hard on your body.
Well, I think that's what she'd be wanting.
Yeah. Although I will tell you, I was at I was judging a tournament where there was some Tai Chi, but I got roped into judging part of the Taekwondo part, even though I've never taken any Taekwondo, because no, you understand how bodies move. You're watching this now. And so, okay, sure, I'll do that. So I got invited out with these high-ranking Taekwondo guys. I mean, the
Masters.
Second-level people from the top. And the one guy turned to me, and he says, "So what do you think is the best martial art?" And I'm like, oh, shit, this is a damned if you do and damned if you don't kind of question. And so I just said, they're all good. And he got all excited. And he said, you're absolutely right. And he said, at a high level, they're all the same. At a high level, Tai Chi people can hit very hard. At a high level, Taekwondo people are very soft. And so he says, there's different training methods.
Was he hoping that you were going to say that, you think?
I have no idea. But thank God I found the right answer.
That's funny. So now it sounds like Tai Chi is serving you maybe even more important now.
I don't think it's more important. I still do it. I still practice it. I still do the push hand stuff even. I'm a little more limited in what I can do, but I'll participate as long as I can.
And so you're flying to Phoenix to do a push hands tournament?
Not a tournament. Just.
Have you been in a tournament?
I've entered the tournaments. I actually never won one. I took second in a couple, and I very quickly quit because the tournament push hands is nothing like real push hands, because anytime you put rules on things, it's not real anymore.
That is an interesting statement. I have to process that for a second. Anytime you put real rules
on things, it's not real anymore. There's now artificial constructs.
You're not talking about rules like law and order.
No, I'm not getting that esoteric. But I am talking about, for instance, in push hands tournaments, there's a rule: you can't strike to the throat, you can't do throws, you can't punch, you can't do all of this stuff.
And is that something that people typically do when they're playing?
No, not when you're playing push hands. You typically don't do that. But if you're talking about self-defense, you better understand that. So
that's why you say once there's rules, it's not real.
exactly. So by agreement, and when you're playing push hands, by agreement, you're not striking, you're not doing this. But different people play different ways, and so you just have to understand. Are these people allowing sweeps of the leg? Are these people allowing this? Then you adapt to that and play that game. So you educate yourself by, I believe, by going with, some people will only do their own thing with their own group. I like to go out there and play with people who I don't know.
I'm totally like that with salsa dancing too. It's like an adventure, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like traveling anywhere in the world, and look, it's fun if you could do it with your friends or whatever, but it's like just trying out a whole. Sometimes I compare like a woman to like a race car. It's like, oh, I'm going to try this. See how the movement goes. See how we like connect. I can imagine it's exactly like that.
It's like that. The
chemistry.
Every individual you touch is different, and how they attack you is different. Do they pull more? Do they push? Do they go to the right? Do they go down? Are they using whole body? Or are they just using upper body strength? And you need to make all those assessments. But
there's no kicks and punches with it. It's just like.
No, not for the most part. There are people who do it. But I've played with kickboxing people before, and I mean, just to play.
And did you beat them pretty badly?
I didn't get hurt.
So I mean, it seems to me like because there's no kicking and punching, it's very contact heavy. It's all about literally pushing.
Yes, pushing, pulling. But the high level skill is when you allow someone to use their energy to push on you, and all of a sudden they think they're pushing on you, but they're pushing on air, and then they fall down.
Right.
That's the high level skill.
And that's the finesse.
That's the finesse. You have to get them to believe they have something, and then remove that something.
So are the best people in the world, are they the people that have like an awesome combination of the brute strength and the finesse? So they can use...
I mean, probably. I've had a lot of people ask me over the years, why do you bother? Because what I've chosen to do is not easy. And they're like, why do you bother? You're a big guy. You don't have to do this. And I go,
you don't have to do what?
You don't have to do the finesse stuff.
Oh, okay.
And so my answer is usually, someday I'm going to be old and infirm, and that strength is going to fail me. And so this stuff will work forever.
Fascinating. I'm sure we got to go, but I mean, one last thing about the push hands, though. How is that helping as therapy for the ALS, or is it not really?
It doesn't. It just keeps me active, keeps me doing things, keeps me moving. So people push you, and you move ways that you might not move otherwise, because you're using their energy, and you can move and do certain things.
It's fascinating. Do you have anything else to say to the people of the world? To this, I thought it was an awesome conversation. We always have good conversation.
No. I mean, I have no grand philosophy. What was it that George Carlin said in Bill and Ted's Excellent Visit, be kind to each other. That's not a bad way to wrap it up.